All right, welcome back to Bible Vibes. This is a new episode. We're actually going to jump into the book of Enoch tonight. Hope everybody's having a good Friday, Easter weekend, Resurrection Day coming up. Pretty excited to get back on podcast. I took a couple weeks off. I've had some electrical issues at the homestead and a couple things just going on. So kind of glad to be back behind the microphone and just kind of doing what I do. So tonight we're gonna dive right into Enoch, chapter one. We'll probably go chapter one, chapter two, chapter three. Chapter three is kind of where I want to land on because that's really gonna get us going as far as the book is concerned. So as we normally do, we will shift gears and I will pull up the book and we will read through and we'll pause in a couple places. I may just go ahead and read through the first three chapters because they're pretty short in comparison to other books that we read in our Bibles. You know, Isaiah's super long, so we may just read through this entire thing, not the whole book, but three chapters. So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter one: the words of the blessing of Enoch. Verse 1, the words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the days of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are to be removed. Now I'm going to come right back here, and we're going to camp on this for a minute, but there's a lot to be said right there. So let's continue on. Verse 2, and Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, took up his parable and said, I saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angel showed me, and from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw, but not for this generation, but for a remote one, which is for to come. Verse 3, concerning the elect I said, and I took up my parable concerning them, the holy great one will come forth from his dwelling, and the eternal God will tread upon the earth, even on Mount Sinai, and will appear in the strength of his might from the heaven of heavens. And all shall be smitten with fear, and the watchers will quake. Ooh, the watchers. And great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. And the high mountain shall be shaken, and the high hill shall be made low, and shall melt like wax before the flame. And the earth shall be wholly rent in sunder, and all that is upon the earth shall perish, and there shall be judgment upon all. Verse 8, but with the righteous he will make peace, and will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them, and they shall all belong to God. And they shall be prospered, and they shall be blessed, and he will help them all. And light shall appear unto them, and he will make peace with them. Verse 9, and behold, he comes with 10,000 of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness which they have ungodly committed, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Oof, what a way to start a book, man. He holds nothing back. Very first chapter, he says, this is what it's going to be, right? So let's go into chapter 2. This is going to get into some of the creation. It's kind of creation, but I feel like we get a lot more about creation in Genesis, but we're still going to run through it. So chapter 2, we'll start in verse 1 of creation. Observe you everything that takes place in the heaven, and how they do not change their orbits, and the luminaries which are in heaven, how they all arise and set in order in each season, and transgress not against their appointed order. Behold you the earth, and give heed to the things which take place upon it from the first to the last, how steadfast they are. How none of the things upon the earth change, but all the works of God appear to you. Ooh, I'm thinking of some other stuff in Romans. Anyways, behold the summer and the winter, and how the whole earth is filled with water, and clouds and dew and rain lie upon it. Observe and see how in the winter all the trees seem as though they have withered and shed all of their leaves, except 14 trees which do not lose their foliage, but retain the old foliage from 2 or 3 years until the new comes. Verse 4, and again observe you the days of summer, How the sun is above the earth over against it, and you seek shade and shelter by reason of the heat of the sun, and the earth also burns with growing heat. And so you cannot tread on the earth or on a rock by reason of its heat. Observe you how the trees cover themselves with green leaves and bear fruit. Wherefore give you heed, and know with regard to all his works, and recognize how he that liveth forever has made them so. Verse 6. And all his works go on thus year from year forever, and all the tasks which they accomplish for him, and their tasks change not, but according as God has ordained, so it is done. And behold how the sea and the rivers in like manner accomplish and change not their tasks from his commandments. But you have not been steadfast, nor done the commandments of the Lord, but you have turned away and spoken proud and hard words with your impure mouths against his greatness. O you hard-hearted, you shall find no peace. Verse 9. Therefore shall you execrate your days, and the years of your life shall perish, and the years of your destruction shall be multiplied in eternal abomination, and you shall find no mercy. In those days you shall make your names an eternal abomination unto all the righteous. And by you shall all who curse. All the sinners and godless shall imprecate by you, and for you, the godless, there shall be a curse. And all the righteous shall rejoice, and there shall be forgiveness of sins, and every mercy and peace and forbearance. Verse 12, there shall be salvation unto them, a goodly light. And for all of you sinners, there shall be no salvation, but on you all shall abide the curse of the beast. Now that's interesting. We'll come back to that too. 14, but for the elect there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. Oh, Matthew 5. What do you know? We're not even 2 chapters in. Anyways, 15. And then there shall be bestowed upon the elect wisdom, and they shall all live and never again sin, either through ungodliness or through pride. But they who are wise shall be humble, and they shall not again transgress, nor shall they sin all the days of their life, nor shall they die of anger or wrath, but they shall complete the number of days of their life, and their lives shall be increased in peace, and the years of their joy shall be multiplied in eternal gladness and peace all the days of their life. See, there's a lot of hard stuff in here, man. When I say hard, I mean there's a lot of judgment stuff and like condemnation and eternal damnation and all this stuff, man. But then like if you actually read it and you kind of like, for one, you're saved, there is a lot of hope in this one book. He says their lives shall be increased in peace, and the years of their joy shall be multiplied in eternal gladness and peace for all the days of their life. And I kind of think about what Jesus said, like he is our peace, right? Anyways, I'm not gonna get going already. Let's go to chapter 3, because this is where it gets kind of it turns up a little bit. But you see what I was saying about chapter 2? They call it creation, but it really isn't about creation per se. It's more about like the function of creation. You know what I'm saying? So the Genesis account is actually like a creation account, like how things came to be and so on and so forth. And then, Enoch uses chapter 2, his version of creation, is more to set this stage, or maybe a better word is like a parable. Let's go to chapter 3, though. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. Wow. Straight out of the book of Genesis. You see how like they go hand in hand, man. And that's kind of where I struggle, because it's not canon or whatever, but there's certain verses in here that literally come right out of our modern day 66 book Bible, and this being one of them. This is in Genesis. If you watch my past podcast, my last one actually about Genesis, it was kind of long, but this verse was like it was one of the parts I spent a little bit of time on. So anyways, we'll go back to that. So verse 1, let's start it again. And it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied that in those days were born unto them beautiful women, or beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men, and begat us children. Now, some of these names I'm probably gonna get messed up, but it is what it is. I'll do my best. These are not common names. These aren't names that probably any of us use on a regular basis. So, verse 3, and Simjazah, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. Verse 4, and they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200. That's a lot, dude. There was 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon, and they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders: Samlazel, their leader, Arakabah, Ramiel, Kakblablo, Tamlel, Ramlel, Danel, Ezekiel, Baraquiel, Aziel, Armoros, Badarel, Ananel, Zachlel, Samsapil, Sadarel, Turel, Jomjael, Sario. And these are their chiefs of tens. Okay? Remember, numerology is kind of important in the Bible. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of numerology, but numerology or number language is really important in the Bible. So, verse 7, and all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go unto them and to defile themselves with them. And they taught, this is so crazy. And they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and they made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Verse 10, and they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of anatomy, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. Verse 12, and there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all of their ways. 13, Semjazah taught enchantments and root cuttings. Amoros, the resolving of enchantments. Baraquiel taught astrology. Kakabel taught constellations. Ezekiel the knowledge of the clouds. Araquiel the signs of the earth. Shamziel the signs of the sun. And Sariel the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. Now that is super interesting, bro. Super interesting. I don't care. Like, we can talk about a lot of stuff, man. But humans have questions, man, because I dealt with addiction, right? If you know me personally, you know what my struggle was, how many years I was in all that. But to be honest with you, man, I never just woke up one day and I was like, hey, I want to be a junkie. Like, this is what I want to do, right? It was introduced to me by means of a lifestyle that I was getting myself involved in. Now, if you go back to Adam and Eve and you go back to Cain and Abel, you go back all the way to the beginning in Genesis, and you look at the life that Adam and Eve lived when they were in the garden, and then they realize, like, oh, we messed up. They get kicked out of the garden, right? Well, who taught Adam and Eve war? Like, who taught Cain and Abel war? Who taught them how to make knives and swords, and like where did all this stuff come from? Because as far as we know, everything in the garden was good. In that garden, war did not exist, right? Makeup did not exist. Adam and Eve had no idea of astrology or constellations or the moon and the stars, and like, I'm pretty sure God didn't just open up astrology to them and say, hey, look, you can check this constellation out right here, and if you connect all these dots, it makes this really cool picture. Like, I'm pretty sure all of that was far from their mind, because at that point in time, when they fell and all the things happened, they were probably in a state of, well, he said, be fruitful and multiply. We can at least at the minimum do that, right? Since we messed everything up, like he showed us, this is going to be hard for us. He did say do that, so let's do that. So I'm pretty sure they focused on that part, being fruitful and multiply, because that was still something that they could achieve, or a goal that they could go after, right? And we have Cain and Abel, and Cain killed his brother, and there was that whole thing. But then there was like a period of time where we don't get a whole lot of information, right? But we do know that there were other people on the earth. But who were those people? Were they people, right? There's a lot of unanswered questions in Genesis as you read through it. Like, it's not a word for word account. It doesn't go like year by year or week by week. Like, there's huge gaps in history when you read the book of Genesis, right? And so all these, for me, like, all these questions always come up. Like, I wonder, then before I even got saved, right? I was kind of into like astrology a little bit. I wasn't like over the board basing my life on, what the New York Times said, my astrology for that, particular day was going to be. I wasn't like that, but I was like pretty interested in the stars. I was interested in the way how did the sun rise? Do we rotate in an orbit, flat earth, like all the crazy stuff that you just kind of occupy your mind with, unknowing that, that was not something that was given from God, because honestly, God was far from God at that point. I was just taking in all the information that I could about anything really inside. I was just reaching for things that may put me at a higher level spiritually, reading the Quran and doing all the whatever. All of those things, like, were now that I look back, I was reaching for something that I did not understand, or I wanted something that I did not know, and eventually I came to know what that was. It wasn't a thing, it was a him. But it's just interesting that you don't get that kind of information in our 66 books. Like, it was left out on purpose, I feel like. And if you watch my first podcast, man, I went into canon and how canon became canon and all of the things, man. But I'm telling you, when I first read this book, I was already kind of far along in my understanding of the 66 books. I spent a lot of time in the Old Testament, but when I read this, it was like a bunch of lights went off for me. Questions that I had that I really couldn't find answers for. They say you can Google whatever you want and you can get the answer. Yeah, I'm with that, but there's some questions that you can find answers, but the answer isn't satisfactory, right? And that's kind of where I was with a lot of things. And then I read this book, and I read a couple of other books, and I kind of started like seeing things from a different perspective than what I was seeing from my 66 books. And you can take that however you want. People are going to say, well, yeah, it's because you were, dealing with other spirits and blah, blah, blah. No, it wasn't. Okay. Enoch was in the Dead Sea Scrolls. A lot of what is in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you believe the entire book of Isaiah. If you believe in Jesus, and you know that the book of Isaiah is all a foreshadow of events to come, his life, his death, his resurrection, which, it's Easter now. So if that is categorized or in a same or similar place with the book of Isaiah, I feel like it's worthy of my time to read it and kind of just, develop my own ideas about it. So we're going to come back to this. I want to go back to chapter 1 because, I like going certain places and coming back and, just, I don't like to overanalyze. I don't like to make things exhaustive, but I do like to look at certain things. Okay. As I was reading that, so a bunch of stuff just came to my mind. As I was reading it, like Matthew 5, let's go back and look at chapter 1, because right here, right, this is what I want to look at. This one right here. Okay. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect, okay, and the righteous, who will be living in the days of tribulation, when all the wicked and the godless are to be removed. Okay, now, I want you to think about something, okay? If you've been a Christian for any amount of time, you are either on one side of what I'm about to say or you're on the other, okay? Either you believe in rapture theology and the rapture, and I'm talking eschatological views, right? Eschatological has to do with end times, okay? So you are either on board with the rapture 100%, you're going to get snatched up and you're going to be taken away, and everybody else is going to be left behind, and judgment's going to come, and there's going to be tribulation and blah, 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 blah. Either you're with that line of thinking, right? Or you're with the there is no rapture line of thinking. And that's where I'm at, dude. Because I'll be honest with you, I used to be a rapture, I believe the rapture kind of person. But then I read the book. And when I read the book, I realized that no, there is no rapture, right? But if we go back, it says the words of the, okay, let me just start here, okay? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So the rapture, okay? There's a verse in Thessalonians that says we will meet him in the clouds or in the air, right? And the word in Greek is raptizo, I believe. And that's where the word rapture comes from. Now, saying that, there's one verse in Thessalonians. There may be one other place in all of the 66 books where that word in the Greek is mentioned. I'm going to give you one in a possible. Like we're playing spades, right? I got 5 in a possible. I'm giving you one verse in a possible for rapture theology. Now, that sounds asinine when you say it out loud, right? But there are people who will fight you tooth and nail about this rapture theology. Oh, no, brother, the rapture's coming. You better hope you're getting snatched up and your clothes are going to be left behind and you don't go through the tribulation, right? If that is how you think, that's your opinion. Okay, I like to keep things biblical. I like to look at it in the Bible. I like to know what the word says, because John Darby was the first person to come up with this idea of rapture theology when he was in college. You can look him up. John Darby, D-A-R-B-Y, okay? And he was just, going through his education, and he ran with this thing that he called the rapture because of one word in one verse. Now, if we don't look at one word and we look at one verse, we can go to a number of different places, okay? And that's what I want to do, actually, while I'm thinking about it. Let's switch over to the Bible, okay? I want to take you guys to Matthew 24, okay? And we're going to go to the parable of the fig tree. Now, what does this have to do with the words of the blessing of Enoch, okay? I'm going to read it again for you, verse 1. Actually, let me flip back over so you can see it right here, verse 1, okay? The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and the righteous, who will be living, keyword living, in the days of tribulation. Check this out. When all the wicked and the godless are to be removed. Okay, now here's where we can go with this. All right, if you look at it and you just take your own interpretation with what you think you know about rapture, this can be another verse that you can put in your arsenal to try to get people to believe your rapture theology. Okay, who will be living in the days of tribulation? All right, when all the wicked and the godless are to be removed. Okay? So, rapture theology. You're going to get snatched up. All right? Everybody else is going to be left behind. Okay? This is why I want to stay with Enoch, right? Because I don't want anybody to say, well, what does this have to do with Enoch? You're just trying to be... No, I'm not trying to be nothing. I'm just trying to go through my podcast, and I'm going to look at a few things. We can agree. We can disagree. It's fine. We're all saved, right? So hopefully, if you're not, contact me. We'll work it out somehow, some way, all right? I'll help you get plugged into a local church best I can. All right, so let's go to the Bible, okay? And we're going to look at the parable of the fig tree in Matthew chapter 24. All right, now, verse 32, it says, "Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and put forth its leaves, you know that summer is near." So you too, when you see all of these things, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Now, what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about the glorious return of him, all right? And he's talking about perilous times, okay? And it's up here in 15 on down. He says, "Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which is spoken through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea must flee to all the mountains. Whoever's on the housetop must go down and get the things that are in the house. Whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his cloak." All these things, okay? Because for then there will be a great tribulation, okay? So at the parable of the fig tree, he says, look, I want you to learn from this parable, all right? When the branch is already tender and it puts forth some leaves, you need to understand that summer is near. So you too, when you see all of these things that he's just talking about, recognize that he, Jesus, God, is near and he's right at the door. Truly I say to you that this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. 35, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." 36, "But of that day and that hour nobody knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone." I can go off on that in a minute if I really wanted to, because there's so many people that say, oh, we're in the end times and you're looking for this sign and you're looking for that sign because all the things are lining up. Nah, just stop. Nobody knows the time. If Jesus doesn't know the time and he's the Son, nobody knows it. All right, 37, "For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like in the days of Noah." There it is. There's the key. Just like in the days of Noah. Okay. 38, "For as in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man." Okay. So what he's saying is, the coming of man is going to be the exact same way as it was in the days of Noah. Okay? Verse 40 says, "Then there will be two men in the field. One will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and one will be left." So listen, if it's going to be just like in the days of Noah, you got to ask yourself, who was the one that was taken and who was the one that was left? This is going to help you figure out whether the rapture theology is something you need to live by, go by, or keep riding that train, because here is your answer right here, okay? If you can answer the question, who was left in the days of Noah and who was taken away, that's going to wrap it all up for you. Because if you know your Old Testament and you know your Bible, you will know that all of the evil ones were the ones that were snatched up or raptured or taken away, because there was only one set of people left, and it was Noah. It was the righteous people that were left, right? And I'm sure everybody, whatever. This ain't got nothing to do with Enoch. It's got a lot to do with it, because the very first verse says, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous. The elect and righteous who will be living in the days of tribulation, when all the wicked and godless are out of here, bro. They're gone. The righteous and the elect are the ones that are going to be left behind. Now, do with that what you will. We can agree to disagree. There's some things I believe that y'all probably don't believe. It's cool. We can still love each other. We can still be humans. We can still be cordial. We can be Christian about things. But all I'm saying is, read the book. You can't always trust what I say, your pastor says, T.D. Jakes says, Bill Johnson, Stephen Furtick. You can't trust 100% everything that these people say. Why? Because they're not God. But you see, God has left his word for us. It was written by him, about him, for our benefit. Okay? So here's the way my mind works. If you read it, what he wrote, you'll be a lot better off. But that's the issue. That's a whole nother issue. Most people don't even want to read the thing. So anyways, I just wanted to touch on that real quick, because the beginning of the book is really crazy, because it makes you say, okay, well, that's kind of weird, but where is he going with it, right? So if we go down, verse 5, and let me get back over here to the book of Enoch, okay? Verse 5. Chapter 1, verse 5. And all shall be smitten with fear, and the watchers shall quake, and great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. And the high mountains will be shaken, the high hills will be made low, and they shall melt like wax before a flame. Okay? Now, verse 8 is a great verse. Remember, you can't read the book of Enoch without understanding that there are more foretellings of Jesus in one book than any other book, even in your 66. Enoch has the most shadows or foreshadows of Jesus than any other book, right? But look at this verse 8. It says, but with righteousness he will make peace. Who is he? Who? If you're Christian and you know your New Testament, you know who he is. But with the righteous, he will make peace. We no longer have enmity with God, but we have peace with God. The dividing wall between us and God has been broken down so that we might have peace, right? He is our peace. He's called the Prince of Peace. So when you read he in verse 8, there it is, Jesus, right in the book of Enoch, right? And will protect the elect. Mercy shall be upon them, and they shall all belong to God, and they will be prospered, and they shall be blessed, and he will help them all, and light shall appear to them, and he will make peace with them, right? And behold, this is the next spot I want to go. He comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, to convict all flesh and all the works of the ungodliness which they have ungodly committed, and all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. So where do I want to go with this? I want to go with the 10,000s, okay? Because here's another thing that we have all been probably victimized of, or just had bad teaching. You know, how many angels rebelled with Satan, right? With Lucifer. When Lucifer rebelled against God, how many did he take with him? Okay. And I'm sure everybody is probably going to have a similar or same answer. And they're going to say, well, he took a third of the angels with him. No, there is no exact number, but I would beg to say that there is not a single verse that says he took a third of the angels. Now, there is a verse that says his tail swooped a third of the stars, right? But that depends on how you interpret that verse. Again, if you go with what other people have taught you, there is a possibility that you could have been taught wrongly, right? Now, why do I say that? Because in verse 9, he says he comes with 10,000 of his holy ones, okay? Now, I'm going to switch back to my Bible, and my Bible is cool, right? So I know the word that I'm looking for, and the word that 10,000 in the Bible is actually the word myriad, okay? So I'm going to go to this search bar right here, okay? Let me go out, and I'm going to type in MYRIAD, okay? Now, myriad, let me pull this over a little bit, okay? Myriad, right here. You see it? Myriad. 10,000. Interesting. Only reason I know that is because I got jammed up one day, and I really wanted to just know what a myriad meant, because Jesus said, can I not call down a myriad of angels? And another version says 10,000 angels. But here's the deal. It does not mean 10,000, okay? The way that this works, at that point in time in history, human history, 10,000 was the largest number that they could count to or comprehend. There was no other numbers past 10,000. So 10,000 actually meant infinity, okay? Countless number, all right? So myriad, 10,000 of great number, all right? Now, what I want to look at down here, right here, this little area, okay? Chapter 12, it uses the same word. This is the Greek word right here, all right? The word, whatever, strictly means a number of 10,000. Now, it is our word myriad right here, okay? Hence, generally of any countless number, okay? You can't even count the number, right? So myriad, first of all, many connect that it follows the first all beware. All right, see 11, Matthew 13:33, hypocrisy, all this other stuff. When you go over this, there's some places you can travel to, but it is a countless number, okay? And I think that that is important, because how can we say that Lucifer took a third of the angels when there's no proof that he even, how can you calculate a countless number? You can't. And really, when you go into that verse and you read it, a lot of things in there are they're up for question. It just really depends on how you interpret it. Are you doing the 20/20 before and after rule, so on and so forth, right? And then the other thing is that in Enoch, he says he comes with 10,000 of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and he's going to destroy the ungodly. Now remember, in verse 1, it's about the elect and the righteous who will be living in those days when all the wicked and the godless are to be removed, okay? So they're going to be removed, and how are they going to be removed? With countless numbers of angels just coming to execute judgment upon everything and destroy all the ungodly. So that's how they're going to be removed. They're going to be taken away to judgment, okay? Now, let's go on down. We'll go into, there was somewhere else I wanted to go. Oh, yeah, let's go back over here. Okay. Chapter 2. No, I do want to do it. I'm gonna go back up here. Okay. Chapter 1, verse 1. I want to talk about the elect. Okay. And the reason I want to talk about the elect is because depending on what line of theology you follow, Calvinism has the tulip, TULIP. An election is part of their theology. Okay. Now, if I go back to this Bible and just say I go to, let's go to Romans. Let me see. I think it's 11. We'll go to 11. Yes, here we go. Okay. Verse 7. Okay. What then? What Israel was seeking, it has not obtained, but those who were chosen obtained it, and the rest were hardened. Okay. Election, I don't agree with Calvinism. Okay. I don't believe that God predestines people to go to hell. I don't believe that he's chosen this person to go to hell, this person to go to heaven. Okay. So when I think about election, right, the words of the blessing of Enoch, let me go back over here to the book. The words of the blessing of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and the righteous. Okay. I feel like in my mind, I just cannot agree with almost anything that Calvin says, because what it does, a lot of it takes away our own free will. Like we don't have the option to choose God, right? We're so depraved, and sin has so touched our lives that we don't have the option to choose God. Okay. But there's a verse that I really love in the Old Testament where he says, choose this day whom you will serve. Either serve the God of your fathers or serve the God of Israel. As far as me and my house, we will serve the Lord, right? And like I said, over in Romans 11, verse 7, what then? What Israel is seeking, it is not obtained, but those who were chosen. Okay? Who was chosen? That is the question that we have to ask ourselves. Okay? There's a lot that goes into this. I'm not going to get on that. Maybe I'll do a little podcast on Calvinism, but I don't want anybody to get twisted up with this elect and righteous. Okay? So maybe I do kind of need to spend some time on that. Maybe I'll get into that on the next podcast because I feel like I'm a little bit long right now. But I do want to touch on the elect and the righteous, okay? At the end of the day, both of those people, groups, the elect and the righteous, are going to make it. We're going to be living in the days of tribulation when all the wicked and the godless are removed, all right? So we're all going to be there. We're going to be one team, Team Jesus, right? And that's pretty much all I'm going to say on that. I will do a podcast on Calvinism and just like look at some things. I feel like there are people that believe Calvinist doctrine that are actually Christians, just like I believe there are Catholic people who are actually Christians that are going to be saved, that are going to make it. They love the Lord, so on and so forth. I'm not the judge, okay? So anyways, let's go back. I want to go to chapter 2. We'll breeze through some stuff in chapter 2 because it's kind of boring. I really like chapter 3. Not really boring. I shouldn't say boring. That's not politically correct. But we're talking about church and stuff, so politics don't even matter, right? So let's go down. All right. Let's look at verse 11. All the righteous shall rejoice, and there shall be forgiveness of sins, and every mercy and peace and forbearance. There shall be salvation to them, a goodly light. Chapter 2, here's Enoch putting out the gospel. We already looked in chapter 1, at the end of chapter 1, where he says he will make peace. Here we go halfway into chapter 2. Here we got another little light on Jesus, And he says, all the righteous shall rejoice, and there shall be forgiveness of sins and every mercy and peace and forbearance. There shall be salvation to them, a goodly light. In verse 13, and for all you sinners, there shall be no salvation, but on you shall abide the curse of the beast. Okay. But for the elect, there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 5, because I would really like to do this, and I don't want to be super long-winded, but I like to be informative, okay? Now, in the book of Enoch, it says in verse 14, but for the elect there shall be light and joy and peace, okay? And they shall inherit the earth. Now, he's talking about the elect. Now, if we go to Matthew 5, if you know your Bible, this is the Beatitudes, okay? Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, starting in verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit what? The earth. Verse 4, or verse 5, blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. In the book of Enoch, okay? 14, but for the elect there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. It's crazy, bro. Enoch was written way before the book of Matthew, and here we go. We have like a little, it's almost like Matthew read the book of Enoch. That's super exciting, bro. I don't care what you say. It's cool to me, like, to know that this book was way older than the book of Matthew, to see some similarities between the two. It's literally, it's like Matthew read this book and he knew the book so well that he, when writing the book, you got to remember Matthew, I don't want to get into that. The words of Jesus were relayed to the apostles. The apostles listened. They were there. There was other people that came along later on and said, hey, this is a great idea. We need to write down all of the things that Jesus said, right? So Matthew is a more Jewish literature. It's geared more to Jewish people than, say, the book of Mark. The book of Mark is more miracles and signs and wonders, and it's short and it's really basic. There's not a lot of Jewish overtone, right? So the book of Mark is literally written for a Gentile population who is not into Jewish culture, or may not know a lot about Jewish culture, where the book of Matthew heavily influences the Jewish population. And so most people in Second Temple Judaism would have read the book of Enoch, okay? Now, Jesus, like I said in my former podcast, probably knew the book of Enoch very well, and then he drew some things from that. Now, with that being said, one of those things is, for the elect there shall be light and joy and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. And then Jesus, in his great Sermon on the Mount, in verse 5, probably had this in the back of his mind, because remember, all scripture is breathed by God. It's written by Holy Spirit through mediators like men. In his greatness, he says, blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. I just think that's so cool, bro. But whatever. Let's go back to Enoch, because I wanna look at a couple more things, because Enoch is really encouraging, man. If you read it and you don't have this paranoid idea in the back of your mind that, oh, that's a satanic book and you're doing stuff you should, whatever, dude. It's not going to kill you. It may actually make you stronger. It will make you go read some stuff like in your Bible. Anything that points you back to reading your book is good, in my opinion. Anyways, now, 15, and then there shall be bestowed upon the elect wisdom. Now, what is wisdom? What is Holy Spirit in the New Testament called? Wisdom. Okay. And they shall all live and never again sin, either through ungodliness or through pride, but they who are wise shall be humble. Now, what does he mean by they all shall live and never again sin, either through ungodliness or through pride? What does he mean? Because I have a verse that comes to my mind when I hear that, and it's out of Romans chapter 8, okay? Matter of fact, let's just go to, this wasn't in my little notes, but it just popped up, and I feel like we should just go there. So if we go to Romans, and we go to chapter 8, and we go all the way down to the bottom, okay? And we start reading a lot of this bottom section, okay? Verse 28, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. 29, for those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to become conformed to the image of his Son, so that he would be the firstborn among many brethren. And these whom he predestined, he also called. And these whom he called, he also justified. And these whom he justified, he also glorified. So what shall we say then? If God is for us, then who can be against us? He who did not spare his own Son, but delivered him over for us all, how will he not also with him freely give us all things? Verse 33, right here. Okay. Who will bring a charge against God's elect? God is the one who justifies. Who is the one who condemns? Christ Jesus is he who died. Yes, rather, who was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who also intercedes for us. Okay? Now, Enoch, there will be bestowed upon them wisdom, and they shall all live and never again sin, either through ungodliness or through pride, because they will be wise and humble. Okay, now Romans 8:35. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? Just as it is written, for your sake we are being put in death all the day long. We were considered sheep to be slaughtered, but in all things we are overwhelmingly conquerors through him who loved us. Here's where I'm getting to right here, okay? In the book of Enoch, they shall all live right here and never again sin, okay? Now, let's go back to Romans 38 right here. For I am convinced that neither death, nor life, nor angel, nor principality, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. So what was it in humanity that separated us from the love of God? Sin. Sin was the dividing wall. It was the barrier. It was the curtain or the veil between us and God. Now, Enoch says they'll never sin again, either through ungodliness or through pride. Because at the end of the day, we're going to get into this book, and it really goes in and shows how kind God is towards us. And the reason why God did the thing that he did on our behalf, because all of those things that are sin and all of that came in because of the original sin in heaven, okay? And then the watchers came in and they multiplied those things. Oh, man, I'm going to end up running out of time. But I do want to go down to chapter 3, because this is what this is talking about, okay? The fallen angels, all right? So it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied in those days, Noah, were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, okay? And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose wives for ourselves from among the children of men, and beget us children. Now there's a verse in Corinthians. Let me just go over here and find it real quick, okay? Women should have their heads wrapped. Okay? Thessalonians? No, it was Corinthians. Okay? 1 Corinthians 11:15. Okay? Let's go over here and look at this real quick. Let's go to the Bible. 1 Corinthians 11:15. Okay. It says, does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, is to dishonor him? But if a woman has long hair, it is a glory to her, for her hair is given for her as a covering. Okay? Now, there's another verse that says, because of the angels. Now, I want to find this verse because it's really important, because it's one of those that kind of just gets people tripped up. When you read it, you're reading through it and you're like, what in the world is that? Okay, here it is right here. It's in the same chapter. I'm such an idiot. It's kind of late. Right here. Okay. Now, therefore, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. Remember that, because of the angels. However, in the Lord, neither woman is independent of man, nor is man independent of woman, for the woman originates from the man, so also the man has his birth through the woman, and all things originate from God. Okay? Now, in Enoch, if we go back, it says that it came to pass that when the children of men multiplied in those days, there were born of them beautiful and comely daughters, and the angels schemed, bro. They schemed because they saw that the women were beautiful. Verse 2, the angels, the children of heaven, saw, and they lusted after these beautiful women and said to one another, come, let us choose wives from among them, the children of men, and beget us children. So Paul, over in Corinthians, comes right out of Enoch, and he says, hey, look, therefore the woman ought to have a symbol of authority over her head. Why? Because of the angels. You remember what happened? You remember what happened in Genesis? You remember what Enoch was talking about in that book? Y'all need to have your heads wrapped, right? Now, the angels. And Simjazah, who was their leader, said to them, I fear that you will not indeed agree to this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. He don't want to do this by himself. He wants everybody to be in on this, okay? Just like most sin in general. If I'm going down, we all going down, right? In verse 5, it says, they all swore together and they bound themselves by mutual imprecations. So they all were like in on the scheme. Then they had these kids, all right? Now, 7, and all the others together with them took upon themselves wives, 200 and some fallen angels. Notice that God's creation of humans, the woman, was beautiful, and all 200 of them had wives, okay? And each chose, verse 7, for himself one. And they began to go into and then defile themselves with them. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Because if you know in Genesis, you know why God wiped out everything on the earth. Because it says that sin had multiplied on the earth, and God was getting sick, man. It was like really making him sick. And he said, you know what? I'm done. I am absolutely done with this because it's out of control. It's out of hand. And then he hit Noah up and he's like, look, it's going down. Build a boat because I'm about to wipe them out. I'm sick of it. I'm over it. You know what? Let me tell you, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to flood the earth. You need to build this boat because of what the watchers did, what the angels did. This was not supposed to happen this way, because when you think about the story that way, and then you read this and you realize that up until this point there was sin, but there was sin on like a
I would say a smaller level because it wasn't as rampant, right? Well, how did it become rampant? It became rampant when the angels noticed the women were beautiful. 200 of them made a pact. They made an agreement. They made an oath that we're going to do this thing regardless. We're all going to be in on it. So 200 of them went and made wives for themselves. But then look what they did. They taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots and made them acquainted with plants. Now, what's the one thing that we know God absolutely hates? Witchcraft. He does not like rebellion, and rebellion is as witchcraft. God absolutely hates witchcraft, right? Because it's contrary to who God is. And so when he says right here in verse 8, he starts out, he taught them witchcraft right off the rip. He didn't start small. They didn't start with something menial, like a little small lie or something. Nah, these guys were bad. And they taught them charms and enchantments, cutting roots and plants, like healing plants and all this crazy stuff, right? But then it says in verse 9, they become pregnant and they bear great giants whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. They were so big, they were just eating everything, dude. They just devoured everything that mankind had produced. And when men could no longer sustain them, what does that mean? When men could no longer sustain them, that means that really men were slaves to these giants. The giants turned against them and devoured the man. Verse 10. They began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish and to devour one another's flesh. Here it is. This is weird. Drink blood. If you know your Old Testament, you don't touch blood. You definitely don't drink blood. But these things that were on the earth, these fallen angels, the watchers, the men of renown, the ancient ones, were drinking blood. And then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. The earth. This isn't, humanity didn't lay accusations. Chapter 3 verse 10 says they sinned against all the other things, birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. And if you know anything about Romans 8, it says that the whole earth groans in birth pain. So the earth is capable, and all of the other things that God has created is capable of making petition to God, right? Because the earth groans in birth pains. All right, in verse 10, it says that the earth laid accusation against these things. Now, 11, Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and breastplates. What did he teach them? He taught them war and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, bracelets, ornaments, and the use of antimony. I don't think I'm saying that right. And beautifying the eyelids in all kinds of costly stones and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godliness or godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and they became corrupt in all their ways. Men, mankind, humans, and humanity, because of this series of unfortunate events, became corrupt in all its ways. Simjazah taught enchantments and root cuttings. Armoros, the resolving of enchantments. Barakwahal taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezequiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Araquel, the signs of the earth. Shamsiel, the signs of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. Now, it's interesting to me, there's a verse in the Bible where Jesus says, you understand the way the sun works. You understand that when the sky is red, it'll rain tomorrow. You understand the signs of the earth, but here I am and you can't comprehend. Interesting. You think maybe he had this in mind? This one event? But men perished. Right here. Men perished. And they cried. And their cry went up to heaven. Now, I'm not going to go into chapter 4 tonight. It's already been long. I probably gave you a lot to think about. I've got a lot to think about. Anyways, man, I really enjoy doing these. I hope you enjoy listening. And if you do, please hit the subscribe button, man. I'm going to try to keep going with this. And we're going to just hammer through the whole book of Enoch. I'm probably going to do some side stuff. I'm going to go do something side by side with this, not in relation to Enoch, but just some Bible teaching. I think I'm going to go through the epistles next. That should be good. I'm probably going to start with Colossians, Galatians, Ephesians, and just kind of go through some of the small books, man, in case there's some people who aren't interested in Enoch because it's scary, or it's foreign, or, well, you shouldn't do that. So I want to make content for everybody across the board, man. Just something that, I just want to give out what I've been given. That's the only way to get more. The only way that you're going to get more is to give it all away, right? So I'm kind of in need of fresh bread. So I figured I would give you guys what I feel like may be fresh bread for you. That way I can get fresh bread in return. So I really enjoy doing this, man. I hope y'all have a good Easter. Just try to keep up with me. If you subscribe, you'll get a notification when I upload. And I really just love you guys, and y'all have a good night.